The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. Today, we are going to talk about how to pick a vet, but first, we're going to start with the quirky tip of the day. Woo! Our quirky tip of the day is sponsored by Viagen Pets. Viagen is a cloning company out of Texas, and if you're wondering how legitimate they are, Paris Hilton used them and Barbara Streisand used them to clone their animals, so they're the best of the best. The actual quirky tip is if you do not have arnica in your house, arnica, the little stuff, I think Whole Foods is not selling it anymore. They've gotten rid of their homeopathic section, at least in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. But the little homeopathics, arnica, little tablets that come out, have arnica on hand for dogs. If something happens, we have arnica that we use quite frequently. You can either just put it under your dog's gum and let it kind of just dissolve there, or if it's easier for you, you can put it in 2 teaspoons of distilled water, put 10 tablets in, shake it on up, and then it succusses itself, and then every time you need to use it, you shake it for 30 seconds. But arnica is great to have on hand. We always have it on hand for ourselves and our dogs, and if you have not used it before or you're not familiar with it, research arnica and get some to stock in your cabinets.
Succussus.
Succuss.
That's a new word for me.
Yeah, you need to succuss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can discuss the succussus later.
I learned all about how to do the homeopathics because Jimmy was on so many after his TPLOs, so I was succussing a lot of homeopathics in distilled water. Okay, so how to pick a vet. This is an important topic, and vetting is getting trickier and trickier. It's getting, more and more expensive, and I was thinking about on the way here, Scott and I have probably had a close relationship with at least a dozen vets since we've been together. And I would say probably 30 to 50 over the course of our lives between the two of us. Like, this is not our first rodeo with vets and dealing with vets and knowing what we want to look for and everything else. And sometimes your options are limited. I understand that if you live in a very remote part of this country and you don't have a lot of vetting options, you're not going to be able to drive an hour all the time to go to the vet. But those of you who do have a lot of options and who are maybe struggling, we're going to kind of talk about some things to look for, ways that you can be more compatible with your vet, because it's a very, very, very important relationship. And I think so often we just kind of take what we get and don't really think about it and think, well, this is what the veterinary world's like now. But really, it is your own right as a dog owner to make sure your dog is getting the absolute best care and that you have a relationship as close to what you would like with the veterinarian you're working with as possible. So we're going to talk about that a little bit here today.
Well, there has been a big sweep in the veterinary industry of these big corporations buying out all of the mom and pop veterinarians locally. And then these protocols get put in place where they tend to lose that
personal touch.
Yeah, that personal touch that hopefully we've all experienced that in the past, and then we go in and notice it's different. They have different sometimes they require you to get certain vaccines and require you to do this or do that, and or your dog has to take medication before you bring the dog in for a wellness check, and a lot of different things are popping up now that are requiring you to pay more money for, and very often unneeded services, I think, too. That's another issue.
And that's popping up with corporate or mom and pop, too. That just can be the practices, policy and everything else. I would say one thing for me that's really important is, can I see the same vet? Like, if you have a practice and the veterinary office has a lot of vets on staff, can I book with the same vet? Sometimes that's not possible, and I understand that, and we've seen all the vets at our practice, and especially it's a day of emergency appointment, we'll take whatever we can get. But when you book an appointment, can you request, can I see XYZ? That is an important thing for me and something that gives me some solace and helps us build this relationship with whoever we're working with. Another thing that's really important to me is, are they kind of on the same page as me medically? Similar to like your human doctor, you want to be able to relate to this person in a way that you feel comfortable, right? So if you're more like standoffish as far as medicine goes and you're not big on testing and everything else and you kind of like to take a hands-off approach, ideally your doctor is respectful of that. If you're the type of person who likes to be very thorough and do all the testing and everything else, ideally your doctor is supporting that. And it's similar, I think, with animals as well. And I would say that I tend to be a little more like, let's wait and see what happens. Let's not jump into this and make a mountain out of a molehill. And the vets that I have vibed best with have, been on the same page as me with those things too. So, that's important. Obviously, just like your basic sense of how does this feel? How do I feel in the presence of this human? And yes, medicine is very important and professionalism is very important. And not always is bedside manner intertwined with that in a good way. But do you feel good when you're talking to the vet? Do you leave thinking like, oh my God, I'm a terrible dog owner, or oh my gosh, I'm totally neglecting my animal or anything else? Or do you feel supported? Do you feel like there's a little bit of an interpersonal connection there? Because this person is going to be with you for many, many years, maybe the one euthanizing your animal at the end of its life. I mean, this is an intense relationship. And I think when we do have options, it's important to reflect on what is important to us and what serves my dog best, rather than just go to the one that's down the street because it's the closest.
Yeah, it's nice to find someone that has the same kind of philosophy about animals as you do.
Yeah.
And it's tough because, they're in business to make a living too, and there are some things that we don't want to do that they highly recommend, and we still don't do them. But when you get into surgeries and the bigger ticket procedures that have to be done, we have... Jimmy is our most recent thing where he had the TPLO surgery. There was a close option for us to do that, and we took someone that was 100 miles away. But they were specialists in this field, which means the guy that did Jimmy's legs does probably 4 or 5 of these a day, 5 days a week. And that
at least
was
2 to 3 days a week. Yeah.
And that was the person that we'd prefer. We were very lucky to get in there, and it wasn't more money, it was just more travel.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point to bring up. Convenience doesn't always matter to us. Like even now, we travel a half an hour to our local vet. We've traveled over an hour before to a vet. And I will also throw out, have your dogs on file at multiple vets. Right now, any of our animals are definitely on file with at least 2 Western vets, 1 Eastern vet, and an emergency vet. And that's just kind of happen chance because over their life, things come up. But have more than 1 vet. If somebody is out, on maternity leave or something else, be able to go to another practice you like and another vet there. Have your medical records in your possession if you need to be bringing them somewhere. If you're on vacation or something with your dog, have them so you can show other people, hey, this is what's going on with my dog. My dog doesn't need a rabies vaccine to be seen. This has been done recently, XYZ. But convenience is not our number one. Cost is not our number one. It is important, but I think cost all across the board is going up in veterinary medicine. So, if you don't currently have insurance and your dog does not have a lot of pre-existing things, consider insurance. We did a podcast early on with Embrace. There's a lot of companies out there that are offering this. Consider insurance, because no matter how you're looking at the situation right now, veterinary care is getting more and more expensive, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But yes.
No. But speaking of convenience, one thing I would look into, especially if you're a new dog owner and you're getting it, or even if you've had your dog for a long time, but find out if the vet is open on Saturdays, because most aren't. But if there is one local that's open on Saturday, that's a place where you may want to bring your dog in for a wellness checkup and get his records on file there.
Yeah.
Because it seems like whenever something happens, it's like Friday friggin' night. And we're like, holy shit. I mean, if we bring him into the vet Saturday, we have to go to the emergency vet, which is going to be a lot more money and with people we don't know. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be more stressful for us, the dog, everybody. But if we have a relationship with a vet that's open on Saturday that knows us, we can call in and say, hey, is there any possibility of getting in at the end of the day? Because we know you're probably booked. And quite often, they'll see you at the end of the day or something like that. But if you're not a client there, there's no way they're going to take you on a Saturday. Yeah. They're going to say, go to the emergency room, go to the emergency vet.
That's a good point that you bring up.
So that's a good thing to save a few bucks and sometimes not make a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah.
Because we've had people that have brought their dogs to the emergency vet and, they walk in the door and they're getting a quote for $2,500 and they haven't done anything yet.
Yeah, and a lot of times the emergency vets only see procedures and stuff with anesthesia, and it's just a whole other ball game and
Yeah.
a whole other traumatizing thing for you and this animal of yours that's sick. So yes, open on Saturdays. What is the flexibility of when you can get in? Are they open late one weekday? Everything else. And like, it's not always going to be perfect. You're not going to like totally jive with every single person that works at the front desk. Every vet there is not going to be maybe your favorite vet to deal with. But you have to accept the protocols of this practice as well. You can't turn this practice into your own situation. A good example of that is we have certain dogs that we would not send to the back alone. Cousteau included. Jimmy could go, but he normally likes to be with us more. So we ask, can we go in with the dog? Is it an option to go in with your dog? Other times at the vet that I use all the time, my girls, I send them back. I don't have any qualm about it. I say, yeah, take them back. Like, you know, draw blood, do whatever. I'm fine with it. But is it an option if your dog is more comfortable to be in your presence at the vet that you can be there with them in the exam room rather than it be they come out to the car, they take your dog, they do X, Y, Z, and then they bring the dog back out to you. All right, let's go to what were you going to say?
I just want to give a good example of a nice relationship with a vet with Dr. Cahill down in Gloucester. Sarge had a little, what was it on his stomach? A little hematoma, some type of
He had a mast cell tumor.
A mast cell tumor. And there was a stitch there that had to be removed or something. But Jess said, I don't want to put the dog under. If I can get him to lay on the table, could you do the little minor surgery without knocking him out? And the doctor said, well, we can try it, see how it goes. And Jess had the dog lay down. He was able to do all this stuff, cutting into the dog. And Sarge just laid there and waited for him to get done.
Yeah.
And it avoided a general anesthetic that could have been another problem. But 9 out of 10 vets, most vets would just say, no way, we can't get into that. But it was because of the relationship you were able to do those kind of things.
Yeah.
And we've even done x-rays with certain, I think we did x-rays maybe with Jimmy or maybe it was an
All of them.
ultrasound without anesthetic.
Yeah, we're big on no anesthesia.
And we went right into the x-ray room, we put the dog in the position, left, they shot it, came back in, took the dog out.
Not everyone is going to have these types of relationships, but it's
but
nice if they bend a little and have more flexibility. All right, let's go to break super quick. When we get back, we're going to talk about a few more criterion.
Want to keep up with all the latest from the Quirky Dog podcast like me and Murphy here? Then make sure you head on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Or if you prefer to listen to the madness, go on over to iTunes or Spotify and follow the Quirky Dog podcast. And hey, while you're there, leave a rating and review and let them know what you think of the show. Until then, keep it quirky.
Okay, we're back. So this is kind of a Jess pet peeve, but it intertwines a lot with everyone else in their veterinary care also. I like to be able to run diagnostics without my dog having an actual appointment. So if I want to run urine or something and my dog is a client there and I just want a urinalysis done, no, if something else is going on before they dispense antibiotics, if they need an appointment, that's fine. But it is nice to be able to run a fecal or run a urinalysis or just do blood for a blood draw for a senior panel or something without it being an actual appointment. So that is something that I like and that you can just ask, you know, when you're interviewing vets, however you're doing this, you ask them like, hey, if I just need to run a urine, can I drop that by? Or is it always an appointment? Because different practices have different policies and a lot of our clients have run into issues there. And it's important to be able to just run these scientific tests that we can't run at home to get some more answers before we start, you know, trying to diagnose something or to rule something out. I very frequently with a younger, you know, female doodle especially will make sure they don't have a UTI while I'm dealing with potty training stuff to know, is it the potty training or do they maybe have a urinary tract infection?
Yeah. And I remember that one case where we had a client dog and we said, hey, can we just run urine in? We just want to make sure this dog doesn't have a UTI. And they said, yeah. But then when we tried to get the results,
then
they said, oh no, you have to bring the dog in and all this stuff. And we think something's up. And then when we get in there, they said, oh, it's all clear. There's no problem. Like, you could have friggin' told us that on the phone.
Yeah.
But we had to go in and do this. And it just kind of rubbed us the wrong way that, you know, that's the kind of stuff where you don't need to charge us now for a checkup when you saw the urine was clear in the first place.
Yeah. Some practices, if you do not come in for a wellness exam, they won't do a sick visit with you. That's their own policy and that's fine. But if my dog has been a client there since it was a puppy and my dog isn't feeling well, I don't want to now be told, oh, you need to have a wellness exam and make sure he has, you know, his distemper booster before I'm going to see him for a sick visit. You know, there's little things that are changing over time. And it's just important to know what is most important to you and what is most important to your dog. There's a vet near us that has this more farmy kind of vibe. I like a farm vet feel. Some people like the very clean, sterile, like you can lick off the floor. It looks like a human medical facility.
The farm vet had the gravel pit in the back.
Oh, stop it. Don't be going back to other podcasts. But literally, like, you need to be thoughtful of these things that, like, what's most important to me? What's most important for my animal? And then we see a lot of turnover nowadays. A lot of vets are retiring. A lot of younger vets are coming in and everything else. Does that mean you're sticking with the same practice? Does that mean you're finding a new option? Like, know what your options are going to be. If your vet seems like he's, 70 or 80 and he's on his way out, make sure you have a backup plan there, because they may not be in business the entire span of your dog's life. And it is important that you feel comfortable, especially as they head into the geriatric ages, to, get the care they deserve.
Yeah, and I have a pet peeve with a lot of the newer vets that are trying to control their clients' choice in dog trainers.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no reason why a vet should be involved in your choice of dog trainers and the methodologies and all the things that go along with that. That's your journey. And I think that a lot of vets now, and I don't know, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I've seen a lot of vets now steering people towards behaviorists and medication over traditional dog training.
Yeah.
And I think I would much rather have a dog do some traditional dog training than just get put right on medication.
Yeah.
There's just I'm not saying that the dog maybe the dog needs medication, but there's other things you can do before you get to that point.
Yeah, it should be your choice. And medicine is one thing, behavior is a whole other thing. And you should feel like you have a right to train your dog and deal with your dog in a manner that you feel comfortable with, 100%.
Yeah, you shouldn't be, if you're using a prong collar, you should be able to go into your vet and not feel shamed in using these tools.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is a good point that you brought up. And really, it's just about knowing what works for you and for your animal. And every animal might be different. Some people have different vets for different dogs within the same household. Whatever works, I don't care. But make sure that it's functional. And it's functional from a perspective that you feel like you're respected, you feel like you're heard, you feel like you can email the office staff or call the office staff and someone's going to get back to you. Of course, you're not going to have a direct line to your actual vet. That isn't how veterinary offices work. But you should be able to email on a Monday morning and get a response on a Monday afternoon, or call and leave a message over the weekend and someone's getting back to you. Communication is a huge thing. This interpersonal relationship that we talked about is a huge thing. Flexibility is a huge thing. Will the vet come out to the car if the dog is super stressed? Is that something that they offer? Like what line, where do they draw the line? And are their policies set in stone and they can't do anything? Or they'll, help you out a little bit and they'll be more flexible for you in your specific case. Another huge pet peeve of mine is these vets that do yearly dentals. I'm not saying that dogs don't need dental work done and they don't need their teeth scraped and sometimes some bad teeth pulled, but these vets that, they just put you on this like continuity plan that, there's a free dental included every year. I don't want my dog going under general anesthetic every year to get a cleaning. That's too much stress on their body and not something that I'm looking for. So when there's things like this that you're thinking like, it looks like a perk, is it a perk or is it something that maybe doesn't, resonate well with you that, you don't want to have as a service and you waive that or you find another vet. So be thoughtful of these things because the industry has changed so much, I would say, in the last decade. And I'm sure that it's going to morph into whatever the future of veterinary medicine is going to be that upcoming decade too. So have these little thought processes and these little things that you can check off your list that matter and your priority list. Priority for us is huge. Obviously, we want excellent care for our animals, but we do need some flexibility with how we can deal with things if we can bring in a pet dog who's sick and everything else. And on that point about pet dogs, I do think it's worth noting that wherever your dog is boarding or wherever your dog goes to daycare or, whatever is happening if you're doing a board and train with someone like we offer, those people should have the veterinary office that you use somewhere in their files. It can be on the rabies cert. We have the people write it down on the contract. But very frequently, if something's up with the dog, I'm calling their personal vet, their home vet, and saying like, hey, XYZ is going on. Maybe the vet's an hour and a half away, but I have an open line of communication with their vet that they've used since they've owned the dog that now can talk to a more local vet to me or something else. So that's a whole other topic in and of itself, but I do think it's worth noting that wherever your dog is that's away from your home, this person should be aware, this establishment should be aware of who your current vet is day in, day out.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff comes from just years of dog ownership and many dogs and many vet visits. And, Jess knows more about veterinary medicine than most of the techs at all of the vets we go to, just because you've had so many different issues. And in the beginning, when it's a new vet and Jess goes in like, hey, she's talking like she knows everything. It's understandable that the vets are like, yeah, well, why don't we let the professionals take a look, And then they come back and say, oh, guess what? You were right about this and you were right about that. And then they start loosening up a little bit and the relationship starts to evolve. But if you're a new dog owner, you're not going to have all that experience to bring with you. And I would just say, go with your gut. If it feels good, then fine. If it seems like they're just putting you on this continuity treadmill of come in for your, like I've had people tell me like they got to go in every month for vaccines. I'm like, what the hell are they giving the dog every month? It's just like they keep on giving all these different vaccines. As long as you don't say no, they're like, well, let's get him for this, let's get him for that. And it's unethical, I think, to a certain extent,
Yeah. And everybody feels their own way about vaccines and everything else. This kind of goes back to how do you like to doctor for yourself? How do you like to doctor for your animals? But make sure that there's some camaraderie before shit hits the fan. Because once there is an emergency, once there's a really serious situation, that is not the time now to be like, okay, well, I got to make nice with my vet. Make sure you have a good relationship with your vet. If you're moving somewhere new, start to see vets left and right, just wellness exams. Dogs don't need a lot of stuff done there. Start to get a feel for who you're going to work with and who is going to be able to take care of your animals. Because to us, this is one of the most important roles that we have in our lives. Who cares for our dogs? It's very, very, very important to us.
One thing that'll make you a very well-received client at the vet office is having a very well-trained dog, a very well-behaved dog, because when people come in with a dog that's borderline dangerous all over the place, that's just a big stress for everybody at the vet's office. And this happens quite often. But if you can come in with a dog that you can say, go get on the scale, free, come on off, get in here. I can put the dog on the table. I can hold the dog for you so that you can do a rectal exam. Here, take a look at the teeth. And you have control of your dog. That makes everybody more relaxed. Like, okay, this person has control of their dog. And some of these dogs, like, the vet would not be comfortable taking that dog in the back by himself, but the owner can control the dog, and they're very thankful. Thanks for coming in and controlling your dog for me so we can see what the hell's going on and treat this dog.
Yes. But be respectful of your veterinary staff. Do not treat it like, the world is your oyster and you can absolutely see any vet you want, because that isn't the way that things go in this day and age. But make sure you know what's most important to you and that those certain levels and those top hierarchies are aligning. Because for us, it has been hugely important to have a relationship that we feel good about, and it has been to our dog's best interest, and we love our veterinary staff. We're very grateful for all of them.
And we've given gifts to our vets, even though they've given us giant bills, then we turn around and give them gifts. We give the staff gifts because we're so grateful that the care was done the way it should have been done and everything worked out well,
Yeah, go above and beyond. But if you don't have a good feeling about it, here is your sign from the universe. Switch it up, start interviewing new people. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us this week. We hope that you learned something about veterinary medicine and maybe where you should head in the future. I hope that you have a wonderful week with your dogs. And in the meantime, keep it quirky. Bye, guys.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.